So the woman in the book of Maccabees has 7 sons who, after Jerusalem was conquered by Antiochus Epiphanes, the tyrant, have refused to bow down and worship the pagan gods, and so they are going to be executed by the powers that be. And so she exhorts her sons to faith before their execution, which she must watch. And she says, but leaning close to him, she spoke in their native tongue as follows, deriding the cruel tyrant. My son, have pity on me. I carried you 9 months in the womb and nursed you for 3 years, and have reared you and brought you up to this point in your life, and have taken care of you. I beseech you, my child, to look to the heaven and the earth, and see everything that is in them, and recognize that God did not make them out of things that existed. Thus also mankind comes into being. Do not fear this butcher, but prove worthy of your dear brothers, who had already died. So, here we have it quite clearly. I don't think it could be written more clearly than this. God did not make heaven and earth out of things that existed. In other words, pre-existent matter. God is not a demiurge, but he is a creator that creates from nothing. And she also affirms mankind comes into being the same way. And so, as we look at this book of Maccabees, you can find that in 2 Maccabees 7:24 to 29. Now, if we are Catholic, and that means we have assented that the Church has chosen which scriptures are truly inspired, which scriptures are canonical, Maccabees is counted among them. And therefore, what is written here would not go against the truth. Therefore, anyone that believes that the realities around us are created out of pre-existent matter would definitely be putting themselves in a position that is not defendable as far as the Catholic Church is concerned. As well as what she says here, this is how mankind came into being. And so she does not say that mankind came into being through pre-existent animals. So there is a problem there as well for anyone that wants to disagree with this text. Of course, the scriptures must be read in the proper way, seen as the different genres that they are. Not everything needs to be taken in a fundamental way, but there are some things in Scripture that should be accepted as the truth that is quite obvious and not needing any extra interpretation. It's quite obvious for anyone that has familiarity with the text of Maccabees that the writer is definitely a philosopher. However, it does not necessarily mean that his insertion of a philosophical point into the words of the mother who's watching her sons be executed is somehow not also inspired. So that God would allow this particular author to, since he has a particular philosophy that he wants to show, does not necessarily mean that that philosophy should be discounted, but that it is correct. All things in Scripture are true, and some of them actually happened. Now we're going to turn from the book of Maccabees, which was written at a very late time during the Hellenistic period, when Greek ideas had already come into the Hebrew way of life, and had obviously even been in the mind of the philosopher that was writing the story of the book of Maccabees. Let's go back to Genesis, go back to the beginnings, and see what the wisdom can tell us there.
So we use Genesis to understand the wisdom of Scripture, the wisdom of God's creation. We don't use Genesis as a science text to find out exactly when certain things were created and in what manner they were created. We use the Genesis to understand the wisdom of God's creation. So, looking at Genesis, then, we find that the creation of the earth and its animals is separated from the creation of man. God says, "Let the earth bring forth living creatures." In this, we are to understand that God creates the animals and the other living creatures indirectly, that He does not create them with His own hands, per se. If you're to understand that God creates in a way that can be either direct or indirect. He does not say, "Let the earth bring forth living creatures and man." No. He says, "Now I shall make man in my own image and likeness." He creates man in His own image and likeness. It's a special creation. Man is a special creation. The image and likeness of God is just the rationality of man, which is more than just logic. It's the reasoning power of man. It's more than just logic. It is an intellectual power that is not fully understood. However, it is a great power that man has, a power of ordering things according to nature, and to perceive things in the proper way, perceive proper concepts and ideas by which reality is arranged according to its invisible laws, perceive those invisible laws. And so we are meant to distinguish between God's creation of the earth and its animals, which is done indirectly, and the creation of man, who is made in the image and likeness of God. Man is made from dust, the dust of the earth. Now, what wisdom is there in that for us? The one who would read that casually without understanding would say, well, this shows that God created man from pre-existent matter, from dust. Well, that's not understanding the genre in which this is written. The genre of Genesis is legend based, which is legend is storytelling based on particular realities, things that really happened, which sometimes are embellished. Genesis that seeks to explain the beginnings of mankind's life on earth. You can understand also that it was written at a time before philosophical ideas crept into the Hebrew world from ancient Greece. The idea, for example, of the void or of nothingness. This is a Greek concept. Hebrews do not have that concept. For the theological understanding of the Hebrews, there was no void or nothingness, and then things came into being. That's a Greek concept. It's a philosophical concept the Greeks designed for their cosmology. The ancient Hebrews, the only thing that before the creation of the world was light itself. God always existed. God, the light from light, existing from eternity. There is no void. There's only, well, you could say there's the non-void. There is no void. And so, when we read that man is created from dust, we must understand that language in a poetic way. When it is written, man is created from dust, we are to understand man is created from nothing. In other words, man is an unnecessary being. Man is created in a miraculous way from nothing, from no pre-existent matter. So God is not a craftsman that creates something out of what already exists. No, God is a miraculous creator. We also interpret the creation of Eve, the first woman, from the rib of Adam, not as a creation from pre-existent matter, but in a poetic way. It's meant to say that Eve is created to be a partner for man, to be with man, to be intimate with her husband Adam, to be of the flesh of my flesh and the bone of my bones. And so this is not to be interpreted in a way that is literal. So